How do we work with hopeless clients? What do we mean by hopeless? How does visualization come into all of this? How can we as coaches support clients who have such little hope left that they cannot even visualize? And how can we as coaches overcome this and use one of the strongest tools that we have available despite all the odds? This and a lot more coming up in Erickson Live. My name is Fabian Lützig, and I'm very glad that you're joining us. So, we have a very special constellation today. Today, I'm being joined by Guy Woods. And Guy Woods is, well, first of all, hello, Guy. Nice to
Ah,
nice to have you here. Um, Let me just read a little bit of an intro for Guy. Guy is passionate about making coaching relatable and accessible to all. Since graduating from the Art and Science of Coaching in 2015, Guy has worked with individuals, startups, and companies around the world to help them create, promote, and sustain powerful conversations which make a positive difference in their own lives and in the life of others. He aims to activate people's passions, motivations, and inspirations to help people achieve their unique definition of success. Guy became an Erickson teaching assistant soon after his graduation and has remained dedicated to support Erickson's team of facilitators and diverse online community of learners throughout their coaching journey. As Erickson's TA lead, Guy works closely with Erickson's faculty and teaching assistants to onboard, train, and mentor the Erickson's online teaching assistant community. Most recently, Guy became Erickson's alumni liaison, in which he will work closely with Erickson on finding new and meaningful ways to strengthen our alumni community and nurture their success. In addition to his work as a coach, Guy works as a journalist and communications strategist based in Dublin, Ireland. Prior to becoming a certified coach, Guy worked in the Dublin headquarters of Google and Facebook, where he witnessed firsthand both the opportunities and the challenges of staying truly connected in a hyper connected society. Harnessing the power of social media, Guy stays true to the Erickson principles and encourages open, solution focused conversations with over 120,000 followers in Ireland and around the world. He gave his first TEDx talk in 2019 on the power of solution focused thinking in a world crowded with conversations. And those conversations can leave you feeling overwhelmed, negative, and dare I say, even hopeless, which brings us back to today's topic. Um, so, the special constellation that I was talking about, you saw Gaby Da Silva is going to be our guest for today. Now, because of a scheduling situation, we pre recorded the interview with her. So, we have all of her wisdom and herself in spirit with us, but we also have Guy and myself to react to what she is saying. We're going to be breaking down some of the concepts that she might be talking about that might not be familiar for everybody. So we do have some pre-recorded segments in here, but the main conversation of it all is going to be live. That's a new concept that we're going to be trying out. And Guy, I couldn't think of a better person to have with me for that.
you know what? Thank you, because not only am I flattered that you asked me to do this with you, anything to do with Gabby, I'm there. I've been a teaching assistant for a good few years now, and when I get the opportunity to work with Gabby, I learn so much. Um, for anyone who's experienced training with Gabby, and maybe even some people who haven't, she brings an element of joy, which is so effervescent. It just brings concepts to life. It is just such a pleasure, and I personally consider her a mentor. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say and to possibly expand upon it. So thank you so much.
Great, and we're going to get your authentic reactions because you're going to be hearing everything for the first time. So I think that's quite
Yeah.
nice. So everybody who's watching, as always, I'd be grateful if you could put in the chat where are you joining us from, so that we can shout you out. Whenever you have any questions, we will be able, like the ones that we are able to answer. We'd love to answer those for you live on the stream. So get your name on here and yeah, be part of the show. Um, for the questions that are directly, speaking to Gabi and that we think it wouldn't be fair to speak in her name and to give you an answer that we're not 100% sure is correct, she has agreed that she will answer those questions either in the form of coming into the chat, or we might even make a follow-up video where we address all the questions that you're asking. So the more you can be a part of the stream, the more we can give you what you came for and deliver, something that is memorable and valuable to you. So that's obviously what we're striving for here. Um, okay, so Guy, the topic is how to work with hopeless clients. And you had a bit of a strong reaction to that, and I actually love that because that was kind of why I chose that title. It's a bit of a mismatchy title, a bit of a title that is engineered to ruffle feathers of Erickson alumni like you, basically. So, what came up for you? Why were you cautious about engaging with the topic of hopeless clients? What did you think it was, and what are you hoping this will be instead?
Well, my reaction kind of had two levels. On a personal level, the word hopeless kind of triggers memories and experiences of mine that I'll probably share a little bit later on. So it had a very strong kind of personal reaction. But from an Ericksonian coach perspective, I had a really strong negative reaction to it because the idea of someone being hopeless is very much opposed to being solution focused. By labeling a situation or a person, even worse, as hopeless, we put them in that box where we're essentially saying there's no hope, there is no opportunity, there's no solution, and you're just stuck in a negative space. And it came to me that this branding of hopeless client, is that the one the coach gave the client, or is it the one the client gave themselves? Because if you're a coach and you consider your client to be hopeless, well, this is when you have to dig deep and when you have to challenge yourself on what it is you think you believe and get rid of some bias and find ways to believe in the resourcefulness of your clients and to not believe they're hopeless. And if you're the client who thinks you are hopeless, well, you aren't, because you showed up to be coached by a coach. And that means there is 0.001% at least of hope. You showed up. And that is enough to build on and create momentum so you can create more hope and build on it as you move forwards.
Yeah, thank you for walking us through that. And it's indeed closer to the latter definition. So we're not talking about cases where it makes no sense to coach that person. Obviously, we wouldn't think that, right? We're talking about people who are in very either stressful situations or very, very tough life situations, maybe even health-wise. People who might even have gotten a diagnosis that they might not live to see next Christmas or something like that. Um, so people who have lost hope, that is the definition of hopeless that we're going with here. And so just keep that in mind, and thank you for keeping us honest there, Guy. Um, that is kind of the jumping off point, right? So when we talk about coaching, if you know anything about coaching, you know that visualization is crucially important. A lot of the tools that we use, they work with visualization without going too much into it. And what can happen is when you don't see a future for yourself, maybe because an authority figure told you you don't have a future, or you're telling yourself you don't have a future for whatever reason, you stop visualizing because there's nothing to visualize, right? Because there's this hard stop at some point. And so the basic premise of this episode is, what do we do as coaches when it seems like the strongest, the most powerful tool in our arsenal is being taken away? When we have a client who says, I cannot visualize. Yeah. So that is, but that would have taken a lot of to get that into a catchy formula is something that I couldn't do. So I went with the more provocative title, and now that I've explained it, I hope people will forgive me for doing that. Um, So the first question that I asked Gabi in our conversation um, was, why is visualization so important to just to get in touch with what are we starting out with, where are we usually having our strong suit as coaches, and then we're going to get into the discussion from there. So let me just cue this up here. Please, in the chat, do let me know if you can hear the volume okay. What is so important about visualization when it comes to coaching?
That's a huge question. Uh, well, you said it yourself before. It's really the core, right? It's the core of coaching. And actually, I just said this in class not too long ago. It's not even the core of coaching, it's the core of life. You don't, and some people, some students will say, oh, what if my client doesn't visualize? And some people say, I can't visualize. And that's the one thing you can do because that's what you do all day long. When you wake up in the morning, you start visualizing. What am I going to wear? You start visualizing your breakfast. You start visualizing what else are you going to do. You're hearing sounds. You hear your kid. You're visualizing what might he be doing. That's what we do constantly. That's the power of our brain, right? It doesn't always show up in clear, crisp images, but there's something going on in the brain and it's making connections and it's feeding you information through those connections. And so that is the easiest thing that someone can do because that's what we do all day long. So when you use that with your client, when you use their um, mode of operation, really, as a tool for the conversation, it's actually a lot easier than what most people think. Obviously, if you use language such as, if you would visualize blah blah blah, the word visualize is intimidating. So if you say that, then yeah, a lovely way to block someone and have someone resist. I don't visualize. I don't go there. Or I've been told, oh, that's esoteric. Um,
My
client,
client does
I even
what?
told the
The
participant,
word
what you're no longer allowed to
visualize
use
is
that word.
intimidating. So if you say
Nothing
that,
we
then
do
yeah,
here is
lovely way
esoteric.
to
All right.
block someone and have someone resist.
So you don't want to. It's your language. You might not call it visualize. You might not want to ask someone to visualize, but you can say, "What if?" You can say, "When you imagine." And we do that in our conversations with our friends. Can you imagine they said that? When I get there, I think what I'm going to do is. So there's always this time shift. There's always a movement. There's always an as if shift that we use constantly throughout our days. So that's what we're doing with our clients. So when our clients are difficult because they're resisting, they're mismatching, to use our meta program language, right? When they're saying, yeah, but um, well, they're resisting for a reason, and part of it is the language we think we're using that is not jargon is jargon to them, and it can be scary. So, visualization is what allows someone to think, to prepare. And if you prepare in front of an objection, well, you're going to get blocked. But if you prepare in terms of a dream where there's no commitment, there's no obstacles, well, then anything can be possible. And that's where you can create and do different.
So much for our first intervention from Gabi. And Guy, you couldn't hear the beginning. We were figuring that out as we were going along. Um, but basically, what Gabi is saying, that visualization is easy, and we always and at any point of the day visualize. And whenever somebody formulates a wish or a plan or something, they visualize automatically themselves doing that because our brain is basically geared to do that. Um, what might be an example, or if you don't have an example at the ready, and I'm putting you on the spot, but what is your experience with why do we rely so heavily on visualization as coaches?
Oh, thank you. Well, I was able to catch most of that. Luckily, we're tech savvy enough here, and it is. Gabby was right. It is very much jargon. I rarely ever use the term visualize with a client because it's not something that they have in their day-to-day repertoire. And being able to speak to people in a language that they understand is key to not just building rapport, but for them to be able to get on board with the process. When it comes to visualization, you had said something just before you put Gabby on that really inspired me. It's almost as if people aren't able to see. It's like you're trying to walk through life missing one of your five senses. And when you can't see a future, when you can't see an option, there's a crucial link missing between where you are and where you want to be. And I've been there myself, and I've worked with clients where the first challenge and the first win is being able to meet a person where they are, acknowledge where they are in their lives, acknowledge the challenge, to see hope, to see a better future, and reinforce their okayness, the fact that they do not need fixing, they are not broken, and steadily and carefully just help them slowly open their eyes to what reality is, to the skills they have, the resources, sometimes to their values as well, and look inwards before they start to look outwards. And you start to build their capacity to see a potential future. I have one client, and I hope this example is relevant because it's so awesome. I was working with this client from Iceland who had had a gastric bypass because they were obese. They were medically obese. And a year later, they contacted me because they had not lost the weight that they'd wanted, and they hadn't achieved the life that they hoped to have. And they had very much lost hope. And at that point, they couldn't see a way out. They couldn't see a future where they met their goals because they had taken this drastic step of having surgery in order to achieve their goals, and it didn't help. And what we very quickly discovered was that they were surrounding themselves with things that were obstructing their vision. And one small example was that here was this guy, I believe he was in his 50s or so, and for inspiration, get this, had an Instagram account where he saw all these amazingly fit young men and women. And here we have a man who's in his 50s looking at pictures of 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds in a vision or a goal that, as we know as coaches, may not be realistic. He was crowded by these conversations of clutter where he couldn't see a future that was realistic because he was bombarded with these images of something that wasn't attainable. But one of his action steps eventually was to create a new stream of people his own age who had changed their lives, who were doing amazing things like going on long walks, people from Iceland, people who had amazing transformations. That he could see, and that helped him see true possibility in a language that related to him.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so it really matters what you put in terms of, so in order to have a bit of an input of a, not control, but to have an effect on what you get out, right? That is true in our bodies, that is true in our minds, and I can see your experience with Facebook and Google shining through, just in the way that you frame that. So that's wonderful. Let's hear from Gabi a little more on how she, you know, helps people with getting into the visualization here. Basically, I'm going to have to kind of cue this up every time, so sorry for that. Dig deep for that answer, and they just bring it down from somewhere. Is that fair?
That's fair. And when you're saying that, what you're also speaking to is who is bringing on this visualization, right? And so your state, so we call that your coach position, right? But it's your presence, your certainty, your comfortableness, yourself with yourself about what you're doing in that moment. That will have 50% of the impact of will the visualization work or not. So 50% was going to be the language you use, and 50% is who's using it, what's happening inside of you when you're using it. Because right now, I can go to a VP and I can ease to a big company, and because I do this on a daily basis, so I can go to them and I can just say, okay, so and I'll close my eyes, and I'm using Zoom, and I'll close my eyes and I'll say, okay, so a year from now, you want to make this happen. And I speak with my eyes closed. When I open my eyes, half the time their eyes are closed. I didn't ask them to take 3 deep breaths and close their eyes, but my certainty that this might help, the certainty that what I'm doing is completely normal, and go into a visualization without calling it such. The match of my wording and how I'm feeling about what I'm doing is what's going to allow someone to open up to do something, to open up to do what they already do. Because then the brain doesn't see difference, the brain sees similarity to what I do on a daily basis all day long.
Yeah. So, Gabi's talking about here is that the way we show up as coaches matters a lot, right? And yeah, what did you take from this, Guy? What is standing out for you that you kind of want to underline for people?
First of all, it's just how much I love listening to Gaby, because I'm just sitting there nodding. We hold so much power as coaches because people, and this is one of the very first lessons that I learned when I started coaching, outside of Erickson, and I offered myself as a service to people. People hire you as a coach because they seek your coaching skills, but also because they seek your presence and they seek your energy in their lives. And they seek a type of partnership that they can't find somewhere else. And like I say always to the learners in our classes, people aren't hiring a friend, they're hiring a coach, and there is a difference. So the presence that you bring as a coach, like Gaby was saying, your ability to elicit strong reactions, encourage with nuance, and help them visualize is something that they not only welcome, but they learn to depend on, because you are their anchor in guiding them through the ability to see a future. You may not tell them the future, that is theirs to describe, but you are facilitating a learning process that they will take with them for the rest of their lives. So the way we show up is key. We must believe in our capacity as coaches to create positive change, and we must believe in the capacity of our clients to be able to see if they truly want to open their eyes. We'll be there to help them do that. And it's such an inspiring and a hefty responsibility. But what a privilege it is to be able to help people do that, eh?
Yeah, indeed. So I think we've made the case now. Why is visualization important? Why do we rely on it? And what are some of the amazing outcomes that it can have? Let's go into a little bit of what might get in the way of visualization, getting towards this hopelessness. Let's hear what Gabi has to say on that. Basically,
Well, some people will say I'm not visual, and what they mean by this is um, I'm very procedural. I need to, you need to tell me do this, do that, do that. So if that's the case, and you got to know your client, right? So it's about understanding the person. So some people will say I can't visualize because you need to tell me what to do. Some people will say I can't visualize because I can't see concretely. I don't see an image the way I would watch a film. Some people will say, I can't visualize because their stress is actually so high. And I work with post-traumatic stress people, or people that have post-traumatic stress, should I say. And their stress is so high that they've built this wall where nothing comes in just because you're giving it to them, right? It sits at the foot of their life and they decide, can I let this in or not? And they don't let in a lot of information. So for all of those reasons, there's a blockage because it's not a natural path. So what I'm saying is, just like when we talk about matching and leading with a client, you lead an energy, you don't lead content, but you got to match their energy first, right? Well, you got to match their style. And if there's someone that feels, then they're going to speak to you in a feeling manner at first. And we know as coaches and with the brain, oh, careful when we start connecting to feeling or associating. If they're gremlins, we're opening gremlins. So we don't have to necessarily go there. So if they're very feeling, I might take the longer path to a visualization. I might do a very short, easy visualization. What are they able to actually name? And notice I'm not saying see. What are you able to name? What do you think you need? I'll use different words like think, I'll notice, through time. What would that be? And then it's no longer a can I see, can I visualize? Because I'm more of a feeling person. I'm actually thinking, but when you're thinking, you're visualizing. Someone that loves to read and be more procedural, and they'll say, oh, you need to explain to me step by step, then I'll just go really slowly with them. And I'll just say, well, okay, well, you said in 3 months you want to get there, right? Yes. Okay, so 3 months from now, what is it exactly that you want to be able to say you got? And then to them, they're naming again, they're describing, they're not doing a visualization. That's fine. Describe. If you could describe, if you can name, if you can notice, so the language will bypass the obstruction, the objection that they have because of their natural style. So you always have to remember the way I see the brain is we have the king or queen limbic brain, call it whatever you want. And depending on what it's taking in, like as information, the king queen brain decides how do I feel about what this person's saying. If they're feeling groovy with it, if they're liking it, then they can expand. If there's no grooviness going on, then it's the reptilian brain that's going to show up, right? So there's no visualization in the reptilian brain. So then you have to ask yourself, why, how can I have this groovy feeling? And we know that the reptilian brain is still very, the limbic system is still very basic. So whatever it recognizes, because it's so connected to the reptilian brain, it feels safe with that. So if it recognizes your language, if it's already what they use, the wording that they use, then it's groovy. And then it opens up and you then can do different. So it's all about going back to your rapport building. So we've spoken of presence, we've spoken of the visualization, and now we're back to our rapport and being able to match that person. So we got three components now, right? We have in order to have visualization, how are you showing up is 50% really of the battle. The words you're going to be using is the other 50%. But obviously, to open the door, you need to have your rapport. Then the door is not even there, even if you have your 100% magic toolbox with you.
Right, the rapport is. So I always have the choice between backtracking what Gabi's saying in detail or doing it injustice by being way high level. And I think in this one, the one word to sum it up really is rapport. I mean, yeah, groovy is definitely the the fun one, and I mean, they're two words for the same thing, really, right? In what she described, because that is actually what she meant when she said it's groovy because it flows and all kind of parts, all of our instincts are aligned, they're relaxed, they're on board, they give permission to experiment and to yeah, visualize. Um, so isn't it funny that sometimes the most profound things that we get in touch with, and this is true when we talk about how to coach, but also when we think about the results that we generate in coaching, that we help generate, is that very often the things that feel really, really profound is when you tell it to somebody and you say, hey, rapport is important in coaching. It's like, yeah, duh. It's like the first literally in the art and science of coaching is rapport. Why is it important? And not just in the beginning, but all throughout. Um, yeah, so that's what was standing out for me. What about you, Guy?
Absolutely. Just, I could sit there and Gabi talk about the brain for hours. This is why she's it's just I love that she called attention to this incredibly important aspect of rapport. And rapport is key, not just in the art and science of coaching, but the art and science of everything, basically. In business, in family, we can't facilitate change or in-depth observations in people's lives if we don't have familiarity, warmth, knowledge. And that was my biggest takeaway. The fact that when Gaby speaks of this, I know the time that I take as a coach to get to know my clients, their world, their language, their metaphors, their habits, their hobbies. That is time well spent, because then I, as a coach, can use things from their world in order to reach them where they are. It's not about them learning how to match Guy and the coaching language he uses. It's about breaking down those invisible walls and meeting them with language and ways that they understand. Getting to know your client and what makes them tick in their world is key, because you get to experience it and you get to partner with them in a meaningful way. I could give you a metaphor as a client, which speaks volumes to me as a coach, and for you it's kind of meh, yeah, all right. But if you give me the metaphor from something that you saw on a TV show or a book you've been reading or a play, 10 times more meaningful. And then you can see something that has even deeper significance for you.
Can I not challenge you, but can I indulge my curiosity here? So
Yes.
let me kind of put on my level 2 listening ears here and bring something back that you said earlier. You said people aren't hiring a friend. People are hiring a coach for that specific partnership. And now we're saying, hey, the rapport is really important. It's important that you have a good relationship. You have to have trust and intimacy with your client. How are both things true at the same time?
Oh, that is such a good question. And I'm so glad you asked that, because one of the areas that many of my fellow coaches and myself stumbled in the beginning is drawing the line between wanting people to like you, to partner with you, and to be their friend and support them and champion them and be their cheerleader, and being their coach. And as new coaches, we don't know exactly how far we go to build these partnerships. After all, we want to help people. We want them to trust us. We give them our time, our energy. We give them free coaching because we want them to know that we mean what we say. How do we pull it back? How do we establish a coaching presence while maintaining warmth? And I believe the key is early on establishing boundaries and showing people who you are as a coach, showing them that in our relationship together, I will adapt to your needs. I will support your goals, and I will facilitate the kind of conversations that activate you best. I may interrupt you at times. I may challenge you at times. Sometimes there might be some humor. Sometimes there might be some more significant, deep moments. But these are my expectations as a coach to have a fruitful relationship. And what are your expectations? And to know that you may have warmth and humor and joy and seriousness, but as long as it fits into your coaching presence, your coach position, and as long as it's aimed to support the client's progress rather than your own ego, if you know what I mean.
I think I do. Basically, it's always about keeping the spotlight on the client, right? And always not indulging, how are you showing up? How is this impacting you? But always about bringing it back to the client, and reflecting maybe and asking them to check in with what's going on. So yeah, I like to use the metaphor of not jumping in the pool with the client.
Mhm.
Because if you've ever worked with a swimming instructor, and I'm saying instructor on purpose and not coach, if you've ever worked with a swimming instructor or you've seen somebody at work, they don't jump into the pool with their client because they can't see what's going on with them and they can't help them get even better, right? Because if the water's in their face and that sort of thing, if they're walking on the side of the pool, they can gently stroll while the client is, having a hard time, and that puts them in a position to notice things and point things out that help the client advance, and that's how we do it as coaches as well.
Absolutely. I mean, if we jump into the pool with our clients, we don't see them, we don't see things as a coach. We start to get emotionally involved. We start to lose the ability to see clearly. as coaches to see the structure. So we need to maintain a distance that is supportive of our clients while maintaining our neutrality and focusing on our skills and how we can make their resources shine.
Yeah. And obviously, that becomes more challenging when the client comes in with stronger feelings. If I have somebody coming in and crying or being really angry, I, as the coach, might have a challenge staying in coach position. And Gabi is somebody who specializes in working with people who suffer from or live with PTSD. And so I was asking her to to let us in a little bit on what it takes, what changes, uh, yeah, what is special about working with that group of people. That we get to the group of people that you mentioned and that you work with, people who have experienced trauma and are going through PTSD. Um, so I'm curious, what changes? What do you need to turn on even more when it comes to that group of people?
Hmm. It's funny when you said, turn on even more. Um, it's different when someone is in touch with their resourcefulness. They're beginning to touch their resourcefulness. Then I would turn even more as if it was this light that I can amplify even more. And then it's gonna, everything gets even clearer. They get even more information. But it's quite different when someone actually is in stress mode. I don't want to amplify. I don't want to, I'm going to almost do the opposite than what I would do with someone who is in this, I can do this, I love this, oh, I'm curious, I'm willing to try. I almost tone it down, if you will. Because any amplification, I'm also, if they're not able to get to a visualization, it's because they're stressed. So any amplification at that level, I'm amplifying stress as well. So I just tone down. And so that's why there's a lot of, oh, it's okay, just put that to the side. So by the end of the week, what are you, if we meet again on Friday, what would you want to tell me? Oh, I don't know, Gabby. Okay, forget about Friday. And using humor a little bit with them because it's about making them feel okay with not knowing. Because when I don't know something, I feel a little bit bad. My clients too. So when they say I don't know, they're not feeling great about it, right? So there's even more stress because I don't know. And I want to not amplify, but I want to decrease. So I'll say it's okay, never mind that. To tell me more about just in general then. Tell me more in general. I'm trying to think of like with my clients what I've normally said. Tell me more in general about your week. What would you like to continue to have? So instead of speaking about what do you want to get in progress, what do you want to maintain? Maintain's easier because I don't have to do anything. So when you're having PTSD, when you're someone who's lived abuse, because I work with also women that have lived abuse, and then it's about what do you want to maintain? What are you proud of? They have a hard time with that one. What are you proud of? Because they're in so much stress, they don't see the little pieces of beauty or what they have been able to do. So I have one client right now that I'm working who it's actually a teenager, and I don't work a lot with teenagers. It's not my expertise, but with COVID, there's a lot more teenagers who are living a lot of stress with high school. And this particular teenager also lived abuse, so that's why she was referred to me. And for her, it's all about the little steps of my backtracking her little steps. I sent in a form because she's reapplying to somewhere. Okay, you send the form, that's great. Yeah, why am I saying that's great? And I know we don't cheerlead in coaching, but it's a little bit different when you have a situation where there's complete blockages and stress. You're going to help them learn how to walk before you can have them fast walk in coaching. So there's going to be a little bit of that's great. So you backtrack a win even more. And I will say, I'm proud of you. I will be their crutch until they can go from I can't do anything to I'm walking now. And then when they start walking, I can slowly remove that I'm so proud of you. And you know what? They don't turn around going, oh, you're not proud of me anymore. They understand because they're becoming proud of themselves. And they have that confidence. And again, I'm not telling them every 2 seconds, I'm proud of you. And that's great. It's just a little, like a little bit of salt, you know? And that's usually at the end. I'm really proud of all the steps you're taking. And name and noticing, backtracking. You send a letter. You spoke to your mom. You spoke to your sister. You showed up today. And with those little steps, visualization opens up slowly, slowly. And often it'll come by them bringing it to us in terms of, I'd like to. And I'd like to is a visualization. It's a future pace projection. I'd like to be able to maintain this. I started painting my basement. I'd like to be able to have it done by the end of spring. They're visualizing. Oh, what are you going to do with your basement? Just keeping it simple. And they're learning how to walk again.
That's a theme that has come up. Yeah. So, Guy, I love how you couldn't contain yourself and you wrote on Skype where we're talking, you wrote me, yes, yes, yes. So take it away.
Yes,
What were you
yes,
so enthusiastic about?
yes. There's two elements in which what Gabby said really struck a chord with me. When she was talking about stress and the need to kind of dial it down, that to me resonated on a very personal kind of mental health level. When someone shows up with certain degree of anxiety, with a situation where they can't even think about taking big changes or changing something. They just want to maintain. They just want to continue. They just want to exist well. We can't contribute to the pressure of what are your action steps? What are you going to do? Because just me being here as a client is a huge win for me. So when we work with clients who can have various degrees of stressors or anxiety and sometimes depression, of course, we we choose how to work with these patients. Sometimes, in addition to therapists, we need to acknowledge, and this is from my own personal learning, that the mere showing up is a huge win. And our language needs to be tailored and very specific to meeting the person where they, like Gabby described, they can't see fully just yet. So we really need to champion them. And the second aspect that she said, which was so important, and I hope that all the new coaches, the new Erickson coaches are listening to this. We don't cheerlead as Erickson coaches. We're not motivational speakers. We're not supposed to say, that's great, amazing, well done, go you. However, the way Gabby just phrased it, I think makes a lot of coaches out there go, I'm okay. Why? Because when people are unresourceful, when people are new, when they can't ride their bike on their own, they need training wheels. So a few small words, or the way that we use our words, that encourage them and champion the steps they are taking, they make all the difference to them. And then slowly over time, we help them build capacity, and we remove those training wheels to the point that they champion themselves. But we have to start somewhere. And I'm really thankful for Gary for putting it out there, because as human beings, when we see someone struggling to even maintain a routine and they take a small step, we want to champion them. We want to acknowledge them. And at the beginning, there is a space for that, because then they learn it is okay. It's great that I did what I did. And I will see that too. But for now, I have a coach that sees me and sees what I'm doing, and they value my participation.
Yeah, and I appreciate the subtlety that you're bringing to it here, right? And
Yeah.
it is a fine line in a way. And I think the important part is you're not making anything up. You're not um, throwing out white lies, or you're not saying you're the best client I've ever had, or oh, you're making so much more progress than my other clients, or you are taking what is there and objectively true, and you are putting it on a pedestal and you're allowing them to notice it when otherwise they would have missed it because they are so in stress or in beating themselves up or something, right? So it's always, good when you can point out something about the procedure. Hey, you did show up, right? And it's not about that's the best plan I've ever heard. I'm sure it will work. I'm sure by this time next week you will feel much better. We don't have any authority to say that. We can't say that. But what we can say is you showed up today. You wrote that letter. You filled in that form in a way that is supportive and all of that. So there is nuances to this, like
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
much. And um, what what I also appreciate very much with Gabi is, like, I hear a master coach talking, right? When she talks about toning it down, that's something, and I consider myself to be at the very beginning of my coaching journey. I don't presume to be able to tell you what masterful coaches do, but from my observations of what I have seen them do and what I hear them talking about, really there seems to be a tendency for masterful coaches to take themselves back even more and to
Mm.
do even less, but in an even more powerful way, right? And to just get out of the way, I almost said get the F out of the way of the client, um, and let them coach themselves, have them devise their own coaching process. And that can sound so trivial, but it's so hard to get right.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? It's watching trainers such as Gabby, and I have to say, you too, Fabian, because I've seen your coaching, I've seen your training. You need to really know yourself as a coach, and you need to trust yourself. And I think that something happens. I've heard of this, and I've experienced it. When you coach for a certain amount of time, your own invisible training wheels that sometimes don't actually help you ride well as a coach, they disappear. When you get to, people say it's 400 or 500 hours like PCC, it's different for anyone. But at some point, you don't have the energy, the patience, or the desire to start questioning your choices. And you go into a place of subtle mastery where you learn that sometimes less is more, and sometimes trusting your instincts and giving those backtracks to clients that really need a little bit of encouragement. They do all the heavy lifting. We learn to be these wonderful, almost in the shadow people, helping people lift themselves up. And of course, each client is different and each coach is different. But when you show up as a confident coach who doesn't take microseconds in the coaching session to question, oh, was that a good question? Was that the right tool? Oh, am I doing well? There's no place for that because that seeps into your questions and the client responds to that energy. When you know what you're doing and you know your client and you partner with them fully, leave the doubts behind. And you can move into that place of mastery that Gabby demonstrates, where you can do less and achieve more.
Yeah, coming off of less is more, going into a case of more is more. We schedule these talks for 1 hour, but there's no way we're going to have this wrapped up in 10 minutes. So we are going to go over today because I think it's worth it, and whoever wants to stay with us will be so grateful. Just because I could talk about this all day. I know you could as well, Guy. Um, yeah, just fair warning. Of course, the recording will be available, but we'll be going a bit longer than the top of the hour here. So the next thing that Gabi brought in was a really nice technique that also ties in with what you just said, Guy, about knowing yourself, trusting yourself as a coach, and not bringing your role as a coach up, and not kind of having these insecurities and putting that on the client. Um, yeah, let me, rather than talking about it, let me let her speak. Just a short kind of description of one technique that she has that I think is just but that's kind of just what's coming up for me as you're talking about it.
Yeah. And and once in a while, what I've often done actually with clients who are really, really blocked, once they're started to walk again, and now we're going a little bit deeper. Once in a while, I'll ask a question that thinking, I'm not sure if it's gonna land, but I'm still gonna ask. And then they say, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then I say, oh, it's okay. That was for your unconscious. It wasn't for you. And then we both laugh at it. But you know what? I found it's a wonderful way for them to begin to answer it. Because I tell them when they say, like, I don't even know, like, what do you mean? And it could be a question, for example, of, well, then who is Fabian, right? And then they go, I don't even know what that means. It's okay. That was for your unconscious. And then they laugh. And then they say, well, Fabian is. And then they begin to talk. And it's amazing how, as long as you don't put too much weight on the question, too much weight on you needing to be able to match my quality of questions here with your quality of answers, and you just let it loose a little bit. Limbic system just relaxes, the reptilian brain goes for a coffee, and there we go, having a conversation with the subconscious brain.
I love the levity she brings into this. And it's not despite working with clients who went through a very hard time. And it's not like, what's she doing? Bringing humor to people who have suffered so much. It's because of that it's so powerful. Is my take on it. What do you think?
That's that's mastery. I mean, that question is, I'd never thought of that question myself. And the ability to infuse, this comes with deep rapport, of course, the ability to infuse light and shade, to be able to dance with different tones, with different intensities, with a little bit of that kind of humor, that really is what creates remarkable coaching sessions, because we partner with our clients on a journey. And it's not like this. It's not dentistry. It's light and shade. It's deep questions. It's light questions. It's a bit of humor, a bit of smirk, sometimes really provocative questions. We want the clients to feel different things. And sometimes when you ask them questions that may not land perfectly, they're still there. They still think about them and they stay with them. And what she describes there is just this wonderful dance that you can have with clients when you have that deep rapport. And I think one of my takeaways from the conversations you've had with Gaby up until now is just how important rapport is to working with clients who seem to have kind of cocooned in kind of loss of hope. Your invitation into their lives is a big step in itself. Their willingness to work with a coach is huge. That is a privilege and it's an honor, and there's a sanctity to it. So when we show up authentically and we take our time building rapport and maintaining rapport and nourishing our clients with focused attention, structure, an ability to achieve clarity, we start to give them a bit of a routine. I don't know if we have much time, but I'd like to share a little bit of my own personal story here, Fabian.
Yeah, please, go for it, yeah.
The reason why we'll probably go for another 4 hours, or we won't go for 4 hours, is because I'm really passionate about coaching, and I'm really passionate about this idea of being hopeless, because for a really long time I'll wear that label. I was hopeless. I had just been through a traumatic experience working for Facebook, and resigned essentially to maintain my mental health. It was a burnout factory, and I wasn't the only one. And this was before Facebook kind of came into light recently of dubious practices. It was not a great place in terms of my values. And I found myself burnt out, hopeless, because here I was in the industry I wanted to do and felt like I had messed it up because my values didn't align with what was going on. And I didn't know of a way out. And I didn't see a way out. We're talking clinical depression, which has its own attributes as well. But we're also talking of a situation where everything you know or thought you knew or learned doesn't apply anymore. So the future that you had designed for yourself or saw doesn't exist anymore. And all you see is gray, blurry, if you're even able to see it all. And the power of what happened next is one that I really do champion, because this is where the magic of coaching happened. If you had told me, Fabian, while I was sitting there on that sofa when I had stopped working for Facebook and it didn't work for 2 years and I was hopeless, hey guy, try coaching. Coaching will change your life. I would have told you to very kindly F off. You don't know me, you don't know my story, nothing's going to work for me, let alone some crazy new age stuff. But here's what happened. Out of desperation, out of loss of options and just nothing to lose, I said, you know what, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to do a coaching module. It'll give me something to do. I'll hate it, I won't continue. Over time, being in the presence of coaches to be, the structure, the rhythm, the routine slowly made its own impact. So this is where working with a coach or a client makes a big difference. The mere showing up in a rhythm makes a difference. It's already a massive shift in a person's life. But once you start to have coaching conversations, even as a listener, even if you're sitting there online and listening to facilitators talk, these concepts are finding their way into your subconscious, into your psyche. And slowly, you begin to change the way you think. Over time, I managed to get myself out of my depression, not just because of psychiatrists, not just because of medication, not just because of coaching. It doesn't work that way. But together, holistically, I started to change the way I spoke to myself, and I started to see a new vision that I couldn't see before. And this is where the subtlety and the magic of coaching happens. It's not about what you see and what you say, it's about what happens under the surface when the questions land, when the client goes and spends a week with themselves and their thoughts and processes this, and then comes back again. The rhythm, the attention to showing up, the work that you put in the coaching sessions and out, they all make a huge, huge difference. And that's why the magic of coaching is one that you can't just put on a bumper sticker. It's something that needs to be experienced because it has been a major component for helping me not only see hope, but find the resources within myself to generate hope and to facilitate other people seeing hope, because conversations change the way you process the world. And as coaches, we have that wonderful ability to help people, ride that hope bicycle, if you want to use that metaphor. Subtly, slowly, session by session, question by question, slowly, the training wheels come off and they're able to see hope.
A hopesicle.
A hopesicle.
You can tell I became a dad. I was just waiting for that to be able to make dad jokes. Not. Thank you so much for sharing that, Guy. I really appreciate it. I think I'm just going to, let that story sit with people, and check in with something towards the beginning of the story when you noticed something's going on, something isn't right. I need to change something, right? This moment of acknowledging your feelings and acknowledging a situation and confronting it and accepting it rather than denying it and saying, well, I'm just not working hard enough, right? I'm the problem, that sort of thing. That's something that Gabi is talking about in this next bit here. So yeah, let's quickly listen to that.
I used to work for, I'm not going to name it because it's a huge, huge, huge organization, but I used to work for another, while being an Erickson coach, I used to work with another type of coaching, and they used to say, to say to the client and even to yourself, whenever you would be living a hard time, they would say, you're not a victim, so don't mention that you're hurting. Don't say the words. Always be like, I'm almost like this self-cheerleading. I've got this. I've got this. Fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. And it never felt like it was as simple as that for me. And the more clients I got that were having this, closeness, because they're not broken, but they're like closed up, right? Because they just want to protect a little bit here. The more I would try to go in okay, but who are you? It's too fast. It's too fast to go fake it till you make it. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And I myself lived some really horrible, difficult moments. And when I tried to do that to myself, all right, who are you going to be, Gabi? I ended up in the shower and a little ball crying. I can't do this, right? Because it's not natural. So what I learned was it's okay to say, right now I feel like a victim. Sorry, that's my dog you're hearing. It to be able to say, um, "Oh, this really sucks right now. How dare this happen to me?" And it's okay to be angry. You got to be real because once you say it, there's this release. You said it. The key is not to stay there and not to just then swim in it, but to be able to say it. There's a release, and this is how I feel. And then have someone accompany you and say, okay, that's how you feel. And now, today, how do you want to feel today? And that opens up the possibility of, okay, I can have multiple feelings. I can feel like a victim and still feel like a hero at some moments. Because I got up this morning. And slowly, slowly, I'm replacing everything that needs to be replaced.
It's actually almost hard to feel like a hero without having a challenge to overcome or without feeling like the victim, right? You need that challenge to have that payoff, to have that satisfaction.
Exactly. You need to allow it.
Yeah. All right, Guy, I know you can't wait. So how does that relate to your experience?
It's more than my experience. What Gabby is speaking about here is the real nuance of being able to give the client permission to see where they are. And from my own personal experience and working with clients, so much of that blockage, so much of the pain comes from a client not facing the demon, not facing reality. Instead of saying, no, 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 I got this, I got this, I got this. Well, how liberating might it be for someone to acknowledge to their coach, I feel like I don't have this. I feel lost. I feel confused. Immediately, you're taking away that battle that you're fighting with yourself because you're not owning to how you really feel. And suddenly a layer of confusion or anger is just melts away, and you're one step closer to being able to move forwards. I love that she said that because I understand this methodology of championing and saying you've got this, you've got this. And one of the people on the feed said toxic positivity, and I totally get that because this reality that we live in, where if you're on social media or Instagram, where it's all happy quotes of you've got this, we're champions, there is room for that to be supportive. But what it does is that it creates this false sense that everybody's woke and everybody's happy and everybody is solution focused and everybody is creating wonderful change. But the fact of the matter is, it's very hard to create change. So sometimes it's important to realize that these slogans and bumper stickers, if you've got this, yeah, they work, but they're reaching people who could be in a really dark place. And that is just an extra bit of salt on their wounds. Well, I don't feel like I've got this. I'm sitting here scrolling on my phone and I feel broken. I feel hopeless and I feel like no one acknowledges me. So if you work with a coach, step one or step two is just letting you be you and owning what you feel. And then in the next steps, you will be able to feel that you have the ability to say, well, I don't have this yet. I don't got it yet, but I can see a future where I will, because the resistance is finished and I'm not angry with myself anymore. And that's powerful. That is one of those aha moments that we see with our clients when they begin to see themselves through new eyes, through different eyes, and they realize that they are not broken. They realize that they are resourceful. And that is one of the things I love more than anything. So I really appreciate Gabby calling our attention to that important nuance there.
Yeah, and I think the important part is, I mean, all of it is important, right? But to then go and say, to not stop there and not wallow in it, but aim, okay, so what's next now? I've acknowledged it. So what now? What do I want instead? Where am I going from here? With the possibilities that I have, and they might be limited, but with the possibilities that I have, where do I want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about using the energy, and while we strive to use solution focused energy by focusing on what we do want, focusing on moving towards what we want rather than moving away. There is an energy in that client realizing this isn't good enough. I'm not happy. I am not satisfied. I want more. Using that energy and asking them, well, what do you want? You don't want to be obese. How would you love to look? How would you love to feel? How would you love your life to look? Go there, even just for a second. Dip your toes in that vision. What would you love to see? It's about using all the energies and the resources the clients have. And in the beginning, it could be it's difficult, and sometimes it might be a bit negative. But remember, this is a coaching partnership. This isn't fixing because we don't fix, and this isn't about one session that just breaks open, a solution for clients. Some of these things take time, and when we are working with people who have suffered, PTSD, trauma, or just really difficult lives, it takes more than one session or two or three sessions. It's about slow and steady progress, which week by week gives you hope. It's about tiny little steps that all together become big steps. And that's where the change happens, where week by week, people are taking small, tiny actions to actually lift themselves up. And when they see the results of a small action, they see hope because they see, I did this. This is real. I can do this. I do have this. That's why action steps are so important. And that's why championing and acknowledging the steps our clients take is so important. And why, if I may say this to all the new coaches, consistency is key. We want to make sure that our clients show up regularly at a set rhythm which works for their lives. But we want to make sure that we have that rhythm so we become part of their mental conversation and so they can build on their success regularly. So we don't want one session on a Monday and one session a month from now on a Tuesday. We want consistency. We want to build momentum. We want to build that engine of resourcefulness and build and layer on it with more and more successes.
Yeah. And the next story is a very personal story that Gabi is telling, and it illustrates the point that you're making, and it even amplifies it to the degree that action steps are important, but sometimes the action steps people aren't ready to take, outward action steps. Sometimes that is inner work that is required, and sometimes it is very, very small, tiny steps in this inner work. And I'm curious what you're going to have to say about this after the story, because it's really powerful. Yeah, let me just let Gabi speak for herself.
I didn't give you that one last time. I work with battered women or abused women because it happened to me. It happened to me in my relationship. And it happened to me when I wasn't living in my home country. I was an Erickson facilitator, and I had this beautiful life, and no one could have imagined that anything bad was happening. But as I was living a separation, the person took it really badly, and abuse started showing up all of a sudden. And it wasn't physical as much. It was a little bit, but nothing like never had blue eyes or anything like that. But it was more of a psychological, financial, mental, emotional. Almost lost my career because he kept blocking me and I couldn't travel to go facilitate somewhere. And at that point, I was surrounded by so many coaches. I mean, that's already what I was doing for a living. But I had some coaches try to force me to visualize my future, and they were so scared for me, and they just wanted me to visualize so I could survive and get out of there. And I couldn't see anything. And all I kept saying was, I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. And they're like, no, no, Gabi, you got this. Just imagine yourself. You're going to be free and you're going to have a whole new life. And it was blank. And then the most I was able to see was a white room. And then I finally had one coach who said, then go there. Go to your white room. And when I did, it just brought me so much peace, but I couldn't go beyond that. And then slowly, slowly, I would go back to just the white room, and it was peaceful. And then I started seeing some drapes, flowy drapes. And then eventually I saw a window opening, and then a lot of sunshine. And slowly, slowly, I started seeing this place of living. And when I finally was able to move back to my country of origin, and I had to find an apartment with my children. And I kept going from one apartment to another. It was like, no, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. And when I finally found this one apartment, it was upstairs. I went upstairs, cathedral little ceiling, small apartment. It was all new, painted all white. And it had these big windows, and it was at the top floor, so there was so much light coming in from everywhere. And it had these white, flowy, translucent drapes, and the windows were open, so they were flowing. And when I got there, I said, "Oh Lord, this is what I visualized." So it had nothing inside, just my room, and I did not take it. Uh, and I thought, wow, even just that, one, it held me to be able to stay on track and connect to there is something else. And I actually brought it to manifestation, and it was a wonderful apartment transition for my children and I. So that's one thing about the power of visualization, to give yourself back that light, that keep following that light. And it doesn't have to be detailed. It can be a color. It can be anything, a feeling, a thought, anything. That's visualization.
Hmm. So I think it's a very valuable reminder for compassion, for kindness with our clients as a coach, right? Because we do have that in mind, what you described before Gabi was telling this, that action steps are important and we want quick victories or small victories, and then we can build from there. And I'm super guilty of that, by the way. Um, uh, recovering management consultant. um, and sometimes it can take a bit longer, and our clients are still okay. The Erickson values still hold true, even if we feel like we're failing as coaches because there doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of progress or even a little bit of progress, right? But holding that so purely for our clients that you are okay.
That's a bias in a way. Us showing up and saying we're going to get action steps, and it's almost us coming in with a prescribed agenda that for all our clients we value big action steps and big movement. Says who? Some people merely showing up for a few sessions is big enough for them. Of course, we want to move people slowly out of their comfort zone, but sometimes people need that comfort in the beginning. I can think of a client that I had who, from my point of view, was it was effective, the coaching. The session went well, but I didn't feel like they were really taking actions afterwards. We had set action steps. They were committed to them, and the following sessions they kind of did them, kind of didn't. And we had a conversation, and we asked if it was still working and if there's anything we could do more, and we tweaked and adapted, but it wasn't their way. And when we kind of arrived at completion, because they did eventually get what they wanted, I asked them, did this work for you? What would you want to do? I said, it was perfect. You never pushed too hard. You challenged me. You invited me to take actions. And if I didn't feel ready, I felt that I was confident enough to tell you that I wasn't ready. But I also wanted to take extra steps. So you provided that cushion that was comfortable, but not too comfortable that I didn't want to wake up. So it's about kindness and about acknowledging the small, tiny wins. Because in today's world, and in an environment with quick fixes, where everybody's an expert and everybody can show you how to get this and this and this and this, the patience that a coach provides, that safe harbor, that safe space, and that partnership is one that does mean time and nourishment. And that is why coaching relationships can create wonderful transformations, because they take the time and the kindness and the effort to slowly build on success. That's how you get to a solution-focused life rather than a fix. And that's why being a solution-focused coach is so wonderful, because it champions the person rather than you and your need to demonstrate. It's all about the client. And that's why it's just a joy to do, and it's a joy to talk about.
Indeed. I actually have an experience that's almost the opposite of what you were saying. It was one of my first coaching clients, and it ties in with what I don't know if it's a company name Cueva Creatives is saying here. Um, so one of my first clients, I was working with them for three hours, 5 hours, something along those lines, and I was asking for feedback. You know, how is this showing up for you? What value are you creating for yourself? That sort of thing. And they're like, well, really, honestly, like it's nice, but I just want you to tell me what to do. I don't know the answer. Like I don't feel like I know the answer, and I just need somebody to take me under their wing, basically. And they went out and they looked, and what they decided to do was to take a program where you had like a manual and you filled in things in a workbook and you were prescribed what you do in the morning, the noon, the evening. And I checked in with them after, what was it, 2 weeks, a month or something, and I'm so happy. They're telling me exactly what to do. This is amazing. Um, and I mostly was happy for them. I was also a little like, if I'm honest, I was like, I was kind of going into what does this mean about me as a coach, and but honestly, mostly, and it was fairly easy at the end of it all. Just happy that they found what they were looking for, and if that's not what I provide, then honestly, so be it. And like you said, it's about the client, it's not about us.
They used their own resources to go and found what they needed. And for all we know, the conversations they had with you helped them discover what they wanted, recognizing the need for structure or sometimes for direction. And they used their resources to go and get what they needed. So the part you played is obviously there. It's weird because as coaches, we don't subscribe to prescriptions of do this and then do this and then do this and you'll be happy or you'll achieve this. It's not what we do. So I can see why it might have been a bit jarring because it would have been the same for me to be like, oh, so you just want a manual? Well, I have bad news. There's no manual for life. Maybe this fits right now. But here's the thing, and I love this example. As coaches, we want to build capacity, especially as Erickson coaches and trained at the PCC level. We don't want to slap band-aids on a solution and then the client coming back a year or 2 years later having a similar problem. We want to facilitate a change that is under the surface so they never need to hire you again because you have given them the tools or helped them discover the tools so they can work through their own projects in the future. So the ability to kind of fill in like a jot sheet of what to do may work for now. I'm hopeful that it creates the resourcefulness to then take these things and apply them yourselves. But as ACC to PCC coaches, we want clients to understand what they need and to create more of that. And sometimes that means letting go and kind of going, okay, if this is what you need now, I trust you. You are resourceful. You are the client. You are in the lead. And go use it, and may that build your capacity. Such an interesting case. Thank you for sharing that. It's so interesting.
Having a hard time building a bridge to the next story that Gabi is telling because it, in a way, is even more personal than the previous one and even more powerful and even more impactful. So I'm just going to let that be my transition in a way. Let me just play it. Yeah. Brace yourself.
That keep following that light. It doesn't have to be detailed. It can be a color. It can be anything, a feeling, a thought, anything. That's visualization. And the other one that I did speak to you about was about 3 years ago. Gave birth to my third child, beautiful boy. It went smoothly. We had meditation and mantras, and the doctor's like, this is like the smoothest zenest delivery I've ever seen. And gave birth, but 15 minutes, and she's about to get out of the doctor, and she goes, okay, my job is done here. And as she got up, we heard a big flop, and I started bleeding. And so she sat back down, and 15 minutes later, I was out, and I started bleeding profusely for about 7, 8, 9, something like that, hours. And obviously, when you bleed for that long, I mean, that was receiving transfusions all the time, but I barely didn't make it. They came out to my husband 3 times. The last time was, this is the last thing we can try. but I made it. I made it. They had to give me a coagulant that obviously gave me some embolisms because it was so strong from coagulating the blood. And then I'm told after all this, you're alive, you made it, but. And they say your pituitary gland barely survived. So, and that's what tells, all the hormones to work. So we don't know what's going to happen. And you might need to replace all of your hormones. You're probably just going to lose all your hair, and you probably won't be able to work. And but you're alive. And you wake up to that, and you're like, okay. Uh, and and at first I was angry. And the first thing I learned was what from experience. It's okay to be angry, right? So I can't pretend. And then people kept telling me, but you're alive. You can't be angry. No, I can't be angry. And I am angry. So I gave myself that. And I, still in the hospital bed, I said, if I am nothing if I'm not resilient. And I thought, with all the skills I have, it's impossible that they're not going to serve me right now. So I started visualizing right then and there. Actually, I started visualizing when I felt myself going 50 minutes after giving birth. I started visualizing this green light going through all my body. And I remember saying to myself, just have this healing energy come over me, please, and take care of me. That's when it started. Now, that is anchoring in visualization, my friend. And then when I came back to, right away, I started visualizing my pituitary kind of flowering, blooming, and healing. And I'd love to be able to say, and then by this miracle happened, and I had nothing, and everything was fine. But that's not what happened. Got a little bit better. I was like, yeah, this is working, and then it got worse. It got really worse, and then my doctor said, we're gonna have to give you a lot of different medications. And I asked myself, why is this not working? I'm visualizing, I'm seeing all kinds of different practitioners. And then I realized I'm still angry. A year later and a half, I'm still angry. And then I thought, how can I still be angry and then telling my body, yes, you're healing? Angry, you're healing. These are not the same messages. So what am I really telling it? So slowly, I said, what do I have to lose? And I just started to go into acceptance. It will be what it will be. If I have to find a new profession because I don't have the energy to work, so be it. And belief in the future. So anger got transformed into belief and curiosity about the future. And I kept doing the visualizations. It took 3 months because I was seeing my endocrinologist every 3 months. 3 months later, she said, what happened? I'm like, wait, what? She's like, oh my God, like all your numbers up, everything is working out. And it was funny because I was feeling worse. And she's like, yes, because I'm giving you medication for something you don't even need anymore. So as soon as she removed me from the medication, I was like, oh my God, I feel so much better because I didn't need as much anymore. And then she said, Gabby, 3 months from now, things can get worse. So don't get attached to this. And I said, no way, and I kept doing my visualization, and I almost have no medication today, and my numbers are still going up and up and up, and I'm still working, and I some days my energy is very, very precocious and faint, but then I know it's time to rest, like I know it's still not completely normal, but it hasn't stopped me from doing anything. And the thing that I believe allowed me to really go full force was when I asked the endocrinologist, can the pituitary gland grow back? Because there was part of it that was dead. And then can it heal? I said. And then she said, healing your pituitary gland would be like saying, can you grow back an arm? And you can't. So for a moment, my energy went down. And then she said, but then again, you weren't supposed to survive 7-8 hours either. So science doesn't know everything. Miracles are possible. And as soon as she said miracles are possible, I said, oh, then if it's possible, I'll take one, please. And I felt that. And that's what allowed me to believe and do it.
I love the note that that story ends on. And I was dumbfounded. Like for 10 seconds after I heard this story for the first time, I just didn't know what to say. So what did finally come up for me in the end is, I'm sometimes careful with sharing these kinds of stories when I talk about coaching because I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I don't want people to get the impression that it's some esoteric thing and we walk on water and we grow limbs and anything like that. Um, but I do believe that what we consider miracles right now will be perfectly explainable some point down the line. I'm always reminded of that when I drive over the highway and I see an amazing spectacle of clouds and light, and a rainbow, and how, of course, people 500 years ago must have attributed to that to something divine. And now we have, the physical explanation and yeah, and all of that. And I do hope that what Gabi was doing there, that in 50, 100, 150 years, they teach it in a first aid class because they know exactly what was going on, and because it's so fundamental to how we can improve our lives. Um, but for now, I guess we'll have to make do with the term miracles.
You know what? Absolutely, I agree completely. We think we know everything. We think that the point we are now in modern medicine or in science is this is as far as it goes, and we don't. And I'm also very careful when it comes to explaining coaching or being a coach to not freak people out with the power of visualization. And if you dream it, you can. If you dream it, it will be real. That's not always the case. And making these big promises or using this kind of language can actually turn people off. But I can say this: that is a true story. That is Gabby's story, and it worked for her. So there is a point to be made that this works. My story is very similar when it comes to health. I went to countless psychiatrists, and I spent a fortune trying to find medication to cure my depression. And it got to the point where nothing worked. And when she did this, I love that because that's literally how I lived. There was this need for a fix or solution to get myself out of this hopeless state, but internally there was so much guilt and shame that it's not working. Why isn't this working for me? Why aren't I fixed? This resistance, this battle, that at some point I said, you know what? I'm walking away from this battle. I'm going to do what feels right for me. And if I can in any way build on what Gabi's story is, which, I mean, in fairness, who can? It's about knowing what works for you, not just as a client, but also as a coach. For me, when it came to my depression, I needed to stop medication to align, to see what was happening. What was I experiencing? To know what a threshold was. And I needed to build my own regime. I needed to focus on what I did want and not put the responsibility on the doctor to fix me or on this medication to fix me. I stopped relying on everyone else's expertise in telling me how to live my life. And in a combination of physical exercise and maybe giving myself a bit of a break, and also some healthy routines, and also letting go of a lot of guilt and shame, I'm now medication free. Now, I'm not going to say this will always be the case, but I've taken control and responsibility back. And when it comes to health, and this is why I'm really excited that Gabi will be doing a health coaching course in the future. When it comes to health, we are too quick to Google the solution, to look for a fix, or to outsource our health to anyone else, when our mind plays such an important role that in years to come will be documented and put into place. Take responsibility for your situation. Give your client the ability to own the crap they might be in and then move forwards. Giving them the permission to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel angry, like Gabi said, is the first step to letting go of that anger. Because then they can build on all the resources they do have. And if I know our time is running out, but if I can encourage anyone out there who may have been experiencing mental health issues during COVID, number one, always seek professional help because that's important. And we've all been triggered, and it's been very difficult for me as well. Listen to experts. But remember, you are the only expert in your life. You are the only person out there that knows what it's like to wake up in the morning and feel what you feel. or what you may feel, and I might get emotional now, dark, deep at night when you feel what you feel, those quiet moments. Only you know that. Only you know what the symptoms are that you are experiencing. Only you know what your hopes and dreams are. Don't outsource them. Don't don't make them fit anyone else's box or Instagram pep talk or coach's agenda, because they're not real coaches. Own who you are and find people, a community, a support system, or a coach that meets you where you are, celebrates everything that you are, and helps you move closer to what you want. Don't outsource your vision. Don't outsource your hope in a way. And just focus on your expertise. As coaches, we can help you, but we can't fix you, and we're not experts in your own life. You are. So own that expertise. And if you are struggling right now with mental health in any way, use all the resources that you have. If you feel hopeless, to Google a solution, to find a solution, to reach out. You are not without resources. And I hope that in some way my contribution to this conversation today has helped people see that, first of all, hopeless doesn't necessarily mean lost or finished or over. And that when it comes to matters of the mind and the heart and mental health, Gaby's story and my story, we have so much more power than we think. So once we recognize it, we can actually use it. And coaching methodologies, they just help create structure that just sometimes lifts us from that dark room into a white room like Gaby was seeing. Or sometimes it's just one little ray of light in a dark room, which then multiplies and creates more rays of light. But I love that story from Gaby. For someone who didn't know what to say, I sure did talk a lot. How about you, baby?
Yeah, no, I feel the same. And I'm kind of fighting the impulse. So I just want to reiterate one point that you made. Do listen to experts, right? This doesn't mean that science doesn't matter or anything like that. I
Oh,
just
of course, of
without
course.
going into politics, I just want to make that point.
Oh yeah, they are
Because
experts in their chosen field. By all means, you must seek
yes,
guidance from people who know these conditions, especially medical conditions, more than you.
yeah,
But you're an expert too. So listen to what you know about yourself as well. I thank you for clarifying that. Absolutely.
yeah, there is a reason why we have division of labor, and we are a social species, and we're
Yeah.
so much better because we rely on each other, right? Just wanted to make that very general point, not to get into
Absolutely.
any specifics. Um, well, that I couldn't imagine a better note to end the Building Resilience Month than the story we just heard, than the reflection that you shared with us. Um, we as always, I feel like I'm so fortunate that I got to be present for all of these, and that I got to um, help maybe in some small way to bring out certain points from people who are telling these stories. And as always, the person at the front of the room learns the most, right? So having that experience with Marilyn, who was telling us about, how scaling can really help us, and how we can, yeah, really make advances by leaps and bounds. Um, Susan and Brad taught us specifically what trauma-inspired coaching is, and how we can um, perceive people who have gone through trauma in a certain way and support them and ask them questions rather than shying away from it. Um, we had a wonderful, wonderful panel with four incredibly resilient and resourceful ladies who were telling us about their specialty and about their passion for coaching and for Erickson in particular. Um, and now with Gaby and with you, what really shows up is this deep way in which, and I hope this is not coming across as a sales pitch or something like that, but this deep way that going through the art and science of coaching has enabled us to take an honest look at ourselves and get in touch with a version of us that was completely unthinkable before we started that journey. And so, if anybody is interested, do reach out. You can also do a free webinar where we go a little bit more into detail on what the art and science of coaching is about. It is just so worth it. And there is actually a money back guarantee for the first module, so it's not even like you're running any risk. Um, yeah, I just like, I don't want to sell anything, but it is something that has transformed my life. So I don't want to keep that from people, right? And there's
Yeah,
always that fine
mine
line.
too. You know, I mean, what could it came to a point where I did it because I had nothing left to lose. If there was a money back guarantee, why not? I've tried everything else. It is what you said. I mean, going through coach training and the coaching that comes with it changes the way you look at the world. It opens up resources and skills that you aren't familiar with. And I will even extend what you just said. If anybody just wants to chat or just wants to talk, I mean, Gabby said that she's happy to provide more information. I'm happy to chat about my experience because I'm such a cynic. I thought that coaching was useless, and here I am years later doing it and speaking about it because it works, because there is science behind this, because everything that all your guests have spoken this month about resilience means something to these people, which means it means something. There is credence there. We're not just talking to fill the air. There is something here that is very powerful. The coaches out there know it. If you're on the fence, reach out, ask a question, start a conversation. And remember that conversations, as Marilyn says, you can change the world or change your world, change your future one conversation at a time. So there's no excuse really not to have a conversation about what matters to you. What do you think, Fabian?
Yeah, I just really want to acknowledge Paula for sharing a very short version of her story, and maybe who knows, always looking for new people to interview. So maybe we can make something happen there. Um, and I just want to acknowledge everybody who has been with us through this month, and who maybe got a little bit of inspiration for their own resilience, for their own journey. Um, and I want to leave everybody with one question by Gabi. I put her on the spot a little bit, and I asked her if you could ask people one question that they take away with that can help them get even a little bit more resilience, what would that be? And here's her answer. Let me just find it. Sorry, now I I was so wrapped up in the story that I didn't actually prepare and looked for the time code. Okay, so here is the question that Gabi invites us to ponder as we are walking out of the door of the
Well,
Building
I'm going to
Resilience
steal
Month.
something from Anthony Robbins, actually. Anthony Robbins has this saying of your life is a mirror of the quality of your questions. And we always have this resonating question inside of us. And that helped me to be resilient because I learned by paying attention to what am I saying? What's my internal dialogue? And my recurring internal dialogue or question was, what's wrong now? What's wrong now? That was very heavy and made me angry. And now it's shift to what serves me? How can I make this possible? What's the opportunity? Those are my questions now. So I would ask everyone listening if you could have, if you could choose that one question that would reside in you, that would support you to be resilient no matter what would be that driving question?
The quality of your life is a mirror of the questions that you ask yourself. What is the best question you can ask yourself right now? Let's just leave it there. Let's just let that go with people in their unconscious and their subconscious and see what comes up. If anything comes up to that question, if you're under the shower and something pops in your head, please feel free to come back to the stream and comment on it. Or maybe something popped up for you just now. Feel free to comment on that. Um, it's a deeply personal thing, so you don't have to, obviously, but it's always interesting to share something, to declare something. It makes it so much more real. Well, I want to thank every single one of you. It's been such a pleasure for this month. Next month, we're going to go into great teams. So, of course, we are powerful as individuals. We can be even more powerful in certain situations as teams. And getting that genius out of teams isn't the same as getting the genius out of several individuals. Um, it's it has its own dynamic and its own complication, and I'm so excited to learn about teams next month in March. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Gabi. Thank you, Guy. You've been such a blessing for this stream. And yeah, see you soon, everybody. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and ask yourself and others powerful questions.
So,